Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest is Chris Meyer. Chris has written screenplays, has been a licensed New York State attorney for over 30 years, and has owned multiple funeral homes for the past 17 years. He's the author of Life in 20 Lessons, which is what a funeral guys discovered about life from death, and also a novel called The Wood. 4 Months in a Lifetime is a touching true story of a father who coached his son's basketball team from kindergarten through 8th grade. And finally, The Book of Moments, which is the book we are here to talk about now. And so we like to stay true to tradition and start off every episode, and this one will be no exception, with a dad joke. Now, normally we have the guest tell the joke. I think it's finally time for me to tell one. So I'm going to share some of my two favorite jokes. First one is, do you know why you can only ran through a campsite and not run? It's
Yeah.
because it's past tense.
Oh, that's good. That is good. I like that one. I'll use
Yeah,
that.
past tense. That's a favorite one. And then the second one, I said to my son, no money, no honey. Do you know what his reply was?
I
No
don't.
money, no honey, no bunny.
Oh, okay. I got that. That's not bad. Nice.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on the program. I really appreciate you being here.
I really appreciate the invitation. So thank you for having me already, John.
The Book of Moments is a very unusual book. It usually has a journalistic feel to it. At least that's the feel that I got from it. What was your purpose and intention in putting this book together? And how did this connect with your experience as a funeral director?
It's kind of a book of prompts, as you said, one line on each page. And I took it as seminal moments from all of our lives, all of us, meaning as human beings, the things we would go through, whether it be the death of a parent or the first kiss and yes, it totally has a journal kind of feel. I always say it's a coffee table book meant to be read by the fire when you're alone and you want to recollect, your own moments from your life. The book will mean obviously something different to everyone who reads it. And I would say that the genesis of it does come from my life in the funeral home. I've owned a couple of funeral homes for over 17 years now. And what is most important to me is what I've learned is that the moments matter, right? And the moments are the good stuff in life. And
Absolutely.
those are the truly most important things. And I think we all tend, probably universally, to jump on that habit trail of life and rush through it and try to get a new job or this house or this, that, and the other material thing. And for me, I learned very early on in the funeral home, basically from messages from the people who I was meeting with to, take stock and go home and be with your children. They're young. And I think that my first son was 1 year old when I came to the funeral home, and that was the greatest gift that it could have given me because people were telling me as my sons were all growing up, just get out of here, go to their play at school, go to the
Wow.
coach, everything that they were doing. And I would just listen. I thought it was important stuff. And so I feel like, I got to benefit so tremendously by my vocation that I wanted to share it with everyone else. So my first book was exactly that, sort of stories that I had learned from the funeral home, and I applied it to life. And then this, I felt like I hadn't seen something like this, and I wanted to write something like this. So that was sort of the push for the Book of Moments.
So you are almost being coached along through your fatherhood journey by your clients and in some sort of a way of speaking. So they were the ones that were giving you those prompts that you needed to really get out and live and to really be a father to your kids?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way it was, Jonathan. I think, I came from spending 11 years in Los Angeles where I was trying to be a screenwriter, and it was a really tough existence. And I think I was so goal focused, never really sold a screenplay. I mean, I got the manager and the agent, but I think I was almost too focused, and I think, especially in my first probably 3 to 5 years in the funeral home, I think I experienced sort of a diametrical shift in my head because I was seeing death every day, and I was seeing what mattered, and I always wanted to be a dad, and so it kind of felt like it was a little bit of the push I needed, but it wasn't much of a push to be wanting to be with these young boys as I was growing up. Just being in their lives. It's something that it changed me. But yes, the funeral home definitely pushed me in that direction.
And so it also gave you a little bit of help trying to have or establish a better work life balance. That's what it sounds like to me.
For sure, for sure, and I think that's so huge. I mean, it sounds like a very topical thing that a lot of people talk about, but I don't know that many people take it to heart. So you're exactly right. I think we have to, and I think that the younger generation, the millennials, kind of get that a little bit more. I feel that
Mhm.
from the generational thing. My parents, I don't know if yours, were children of immigrants, came over, and that work ethic was so ingrained into them,
Oh, yeah.
and it was like, I had a grandfather who was my best friend, and that guy delivered milk, eggs, and pickles up and down the streets of New York City for 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and like, and only to have his wife die at like before he, just before he retired, like, and and
Mm.
and that probably also has was sort of a very important moment in my life because it showed that you could do everything, you could prepare for everything, and then you just want to ride out the sunset with your beautiful bride who you waited for and then sent money over to Germany to bring over here, and for what, right? She ends
Mhm.
up passing. I mean, so I guess the message maybe is life is cruel, and that's why we need to do these things now. Don't wait, and kind of you look at, you have to make a living. You and I both know that very well, but
Mhm.
you have to take time for these small moments because they're what's going to be matter. I believe when you close your eyes, you're going to be surrounded by your family and maybe a few close friends, and so we don't need much. We really don't, and you're going to have the memories, and that's what I'm trying to have those with my sons, but also I'm trying to remind everyone, go, keep it small, keep it simple. That's all you need to do.
Mm. Do you think fathers today struggle to spend time with their kids and even struggle to connect with them emotionally? Why? What do you think is is contributing to this challenge?
Yeah,
If there even is that challenge.
I think there is a challenge, but I think it's less than the generation before us. I think that the tragedy of 9/11, I feel like, was a turning point for a lot of people,
Oh wow,
and it
yes.
told us all to, no one is immune, and go take the time. I think it is the emotional component is challenging. I think a lot of us, myself and included, coaching is a real great way to spend time with your children. I'm a crazy coach. I coach everything, and I want to, but it's the emotional component is what you hit upon, and sometimes that's hard because we're in this win-win, and I'm no different. I'm trying to win every time I'm out there, but I think those moments of, like I said in one of my books, is driving home, try not to talk about the game, try to talk about something different, or listen to their conversations that they're having with their friends who are in the car. and try to establish that connection away from the game. So the emotional component is challenging, especially as they get older, right around seventh, eighth grade, they start to they
Hmm.
start to have minds of their own and want to do their own thing, and
Hmm.
and that can be, I don't know, you don't have teenagers yet, but that was one of the harsh lessons I've learned, is spending all this time with especially my middle son and his friends, and
I
then
have a tween, and I can see that already
yeah.
starting to happen.
I you start to become, I don't even know this boy at sometimes, when they turn to be that freshman in high school, and certainly the sophomores, it's more about the phone and the video games. And I had such an emotional connection with all my boys at that younger age, and I was revered. And now I'm sometimes, I'm the enemy. So the emotional component is something, as they grow, I find challenging, especially at 14, 15, 16. That's a tough area for me, or was a tough area for me. I'm going through it with my middle guy. I still got my little guy, so I'm right in between. But I can see my little guy already turning,
Hmm.
Jonathan. So I'm like, oh no, here we go. But yeah,
So we
emotional
really
is
have to
is tough.
be almost very deliberate about that emotional component, because it's not always comfortable and it's not always instinctive for us. So we have to be deliberate about those moments. Like you said, you're in the car and everyone's piling in the car after the game is over, and instinctively we want to talk about the game, but
Right.
sometimes just listening and engaging in some of those side conversations, it's a
Hugely
very deliberate
important.
act.
Yeah, hugely important and hugely deliberate. And I again, I've said a lot. The best time that I find is like tuck in time, when
Mm.
everyone's a little bit tired, the guards are down, and we can talk a little bit more freely. I think that's the time for a good emotional connection. And I found with all of my boys that that's a time when we can just recap the day in a relaxed setting. We can talk about deeper issues. And I have found those have been for me the most revealing times, the most important times of bonding for me with them, because it's just me and them, and it's quiet and it's a relaxed atmosphere. So yeah, it's important though. It's important to go for those opportunities, and not be offended if you get shut down, because it's kids, aren't that emotionally evolved. So sometimes they're like, yeah, giving you those one word answers, and keep trying is all I can say. Keep trying.
You're definitely right. There's something about that downtime at the end of the day, like right before going to bed, where those conversations pop up. And it's a very good ritual to have. I would encourage any dad, if you haven't already started that ritual, to start that ritual with your child and just ask them, simple things. How was your day going? And then go a little bit deeper.
Yep.
What was the most exciting part of your day? What did you like or enjoy the most about it?
Right.
And what did you like the least about your day? What were the parts that were not so much fun?
Right. I think that's all good, and I think the other important thing, which a lot of us have a hard time with, myself included, is the ability to listen. Right, is to let them rip it, so to speak, and
Yep.
let them talk, and not have to be commenting on everything. And I think that's sometimes difficult as a father, as a businessman. Um, I continuously learn almost each and every day. And I find that closing my mouth and using my ears is really good. I think it's let someone else talk, or let your sons, just go off and riff on their own, and let's hear what they want to talk about.
Hmm.
Um, a real gift is listening, for sure.
So I'm thinking about your book. How can the Book of Moments be a resource for dads to connect with their families, and even more than that?
I want to find a commonality, and I think of a vulnerability, and I think children respond to that. And so this is, for me, a real hard thing, is to try to be to try to find that balance, right, between being that father. You have to be the dad, the disciplinarian, and you have to treat them right from wrong. But also, I think children and people respond to vulnerability, and I think that honesty of your failures really help teach your children a great deal, because they can kind of start to see an identifiability of like, hey, dad's been through this, dad experienced what I'm experiencing, and dad doesn't have all the answers, didn't have them certainly back when he was 16 or 13, and maybe he doesn't have them all now. Like, that's the kind of dad I am. I don't have all the answers. I'm one of those dads that shares with his children that, hey man, I'm kind of making this up as I go too, so bear with me.
Mm.
I don't have it all locked tight, and I think my children appreciate that. But I'll let you know in 20 years. We'll hook up again, Jonathan. But that's the way I like to parent. And it's hard because the minute you feel this identifiability and they understand you, you got to sometimes crack down and say, hey man, that's not acceptable behavior. And I can see in my son's faces like, wait, who's this guy? Who's the
Uh-huh.
disciplinarian dude? We were just hanging out, and like, so it's a challenge. And I think maybe that's the best lesson, right? It's challenging to be a dad. It's not always easy.
It is. And I think the book, when I read through the questions really motivate you to be real, to be
Yeah,
very real and vulnerable. It's an exercise in emotional vulnerability. And I think that that is one of the greatest contributions that book can offer in your involvement with your family dynamics. It
for sure.
really makes it easier. It encourages you to be more real with your kids and even your spouse, with your entire family.
Yeah, and that's not always easy, right? Because there's to speak the truth, to truly speak the truth, like you said, is vulnerable, and vulnerable kind of feels weird sometimes, and it does for everyone.
Hmm.
And it's not something everyone likes to talk about, but I believe that it it will it will help others show that you're not perfect, right? And there is no perfection in the world. And I think a lot of times we are all, especially as young people in this day and age, as well as I, Jonathan, what we see on Instagram and TikTok, and it's insanity, the imagery that these children are seeing with perfect lighting and perfect clothing and perfect this and that. And that's not life. I mean,
Hmm.
I gotta we as parents, if nothing else, look, you're not gonna pull them away from it. That don't try to do that. Don't try to say no video games. Don't try to say no social media. It's not possible. Everyone is doing it. Again, it doesn't make it right. I get it, but if you could just temper it and say, that form of entertainment is like the movies, and if you ever saw how a movie was shot, you would laugh, because it's just so not real, and it's so put on, is what I'm saying.
I love that approach of just having that conversation with them about what is real and what isn't. And then you have this book which encourages you to actually model that reality, that vulnerability, and take it a step further and even share those experiences with your kids. And that's real. And I think the other aspect of this book is it is a great resource for a family legacy. I mean, it's almost as if it's a memoir. It's a memoir that you can leave behind for your family.
Well, that I feel that way 1,000%, and I think that's why I wrote things. I want, people say, "Oh, is this a lucrative business for you?" And I'm like, "No, this is not at all. It's a legacy." And I say, I write what I want to write. I want to leave a legacy. I want my children, I think they will through my books, understand how much they meant to me, and I think that they can glean a part of my personality in each of the books. And to me, that is what excites me. I'm going to leave a legacy behind through these books, and they will live in perpetuity. And I like that. There's an ego part about that I like. And
Hmm.
I think the messaging in every one of my books has this undercurrent of family is the most important, step off the habit trail, do what you love in life, and you don't need much. And I think those are good messages to leave with the next generation. And that really, really excites me. And I think that's why I keep writing. So, um, yeah, would I love to be discovered and be on the New York Times bestseller list? Sure, that would be cool, really cool. But it's not what motivates me. I am motivated to write, to leave my children with a little bit of a legacy, and understand who I truly am, and maybe their children's children if I'm not around to see that. I think that's cool, and I think you're exactly right. I've always said, put these in a time capsule, put these in a journal, and leave it for your family, because they'll know a little bit more about you, right? And that kind of thing is super cool. I think uncovering, where you came from, really, really important to understand who you came
What was your favorite task or question in the book, and why?
from. Wow, that's a big one. I have so many of them. I like memories of people from the past. What the anything that's related to my grandfather,
Mm.
the moments that I had with him, uh, a true, you know, a great relationship between a grandfather and a grandson. I think that not many children probably experienced what I experienced, and it was just one of those time frames where he was around and I was around as I was growing up, and my parents, you know, made sure that he was taken care of. So anything related to him, because you know, I think it's really important for children to understand the elderly. And I'm not a huge fan of how we take care of the elderly in our country. I know the assisted living communities of the world will not like to hear that, but I want my parents and my in-laws to age in our home with us, because I think it teaches the children something called empathy. And I think being an empath and understanding that there but the grace of God go you, and you will be in this position in one moment in your life, and you treat people with dignity and respect at all ages, especially as the elderly when they need us. I think that's really, really important. So any prompt that is related to my grandfather, I'm very, very very, very much endears me,
I
even
think
more to him to this day.
I think that question is an open door for some very deep conversations to happen from one generation to another, as this book, along with the answers to that question, are passed on. And that's
because
powerful.
because it did just that, right? It did for you, prompting me. Let me tell you the story of my grandfather and that empathy, which I think is the key component in all this. And I think those are the kind of things, look at, those aren't always comfortable conversations. And like we talked about earlier, the vulnerability is sometimes tough, but man, your children will learn so much more about you and where they came from by just having these conversations. And look, it doesn't have to be all day long. It's a break from their video game, or you sitting down and you all chat. What a wonderful, wonderful tool, right? I mean, again, that was the impetus for it. So
Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing that has me so interested in this book. I had a guest on recently. His name was Chris Bruno. And the episode was about knowing who you are, which is the top two things that make a man who he is and make a father who he is number one, knowing who you are, and number two, knowing your purpose. And so I've talked a lot in previous episodes about the spiritual implications of knowing who you are, but there's a whole other side to this, which we touched on in Chris Bruno's episode, which is the generational component. And I'm so fascinated by this book because it is such a great, useful tool for going back and establishing that generational aspect of knowing who you are.
Yeah, and when do you think you know who you are, Jonathan? That's the other thing that I find, because I think, as an 18-year-old young man, I certainly didn't know. As a 30-year-old, I didn't know who I was. Even, I would say for me, it was very, Peter Pan. It was very late in life. And the 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 turning point for me personally was the birth of my son, right? And that was like the smack in the face from whomever is the creator and said, "Hey, dude, time to get real. You got one of these." And that for me was my turning point, and it was really late in life.
All of your books are about family. And in those books, you model what it means to invest your time and connect with your family emotionally. On that note, what is your challenge for dads listening as we close?
We all think that we have to purchase, or we have to take trips, or we have to go to Disneyland, or we have to do this and that. And I would tell everyone who will listen that the best times with your children are on the carpet with them, looking them in the eye, and them knowing you're present, playing figurines of any sort, or just chatting. That is what they truly want. They want the eye connection, and don't try to give them anything more than that. If you're giving them that on a consistent basis, I'm going to guarantee you your sons, your daughters are going to grow up to be well adjusted. And that is the greatest thing.
So if you are interested in knowing anything about Chris Meyer or anything that he's done, you can find this book by going to thefatherhoodchallenge.com and going to this episode and clicking on the link below this episode description. And while you're there, through that link, you can look and find all of Chris Meyer's other books too. If you would like to learn more about Chris, you can visit his website at chrismeyerauthor.com. That's chrismeyerauthor.com. I will also put the link below the episode description. Chris, thank you so much for being on the program.
I really appreciate you having me, Jonathan, and thank you for a great talk. You're really good at what you do.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.